Good morning, everyone. My name is Jack Ballard, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the quote, "Knowledge is power." Well, today I'm going to change that up a little bit and tell you why language is actually power instead of knowledge. So I resonate deeply with language and the topic of language because during my sophomore year I went on an immersion trip to Ecuador, Mount Sinai, and it was a life-changing experience, but obviously, as you probably know, everyone there spoke Spanish. And I had taken Spanish classes for my whole life, but I had never been proficient in it. So when I got there, we frequently had discussions with Spanish speakers there, but I was never really able to connect with them on a deeper level because I didn't really speak Spanish, I couldn't understand it. So I kind of always have a tinge of regret because I wasn't really able to understand them and I didn't really process the language that they were communicating to me. So I really want to emphasize, before I get into the details of it, really why language is so important. Language is the way we communicate with other people around the world and the people in our environment. And it's the way that ideas are shared, and just the way that we process how others feel and how we can communicate with others. So I want to get into the pros and cons of learning a new language. So the pros of learning a new language include traveling to places where you know the language that are foreign, having a new outlook on different cultures, and also improving your focus and memory. And I actually found an interesting research experiment on how language improves focus and memory. So at Northwestern University, 23 bilingual students and 25 non-bilingual students were tested in a distracting environment with sounds such as music and talking. And what they tested for was if they could respond to a certain sound in that environment. And they found that the students that were bilingual had a significantly higher rate of response than the students who are not bilingual. So if anything, that really shows not only the importance, but like how deeply bilingual students are able to process more than non-bilingual students. And I want to also talk about the cons, which is nothing. Throughout all my research and just through my experience with language around me and how it is spoken in different languages, there's really no cons. You can't go wrong with learning a new language, right? So when you learn a new language, it's going to be hard, right? As everything in life is hard. Everything's going to take effort, time, dedication. You just got to be willing to put that work in. So making an excuse that it's too hard to learn a new language is not really going to cut it when you're trying to explain to someone else that you're only speaking one language, when the opportunities are all out there for you to learn a new language. And another interesting topic that I learned about learning a new language is that it can also improve decision making tremendously. I found a very interesting experiment conducted at the University of Chicago, and it took a group of bilingual students and non-bilingual students. And what it did is it presented a high-risk option to each student in each group. This could consist of something as they gave each student $1 and they offered to flip a coin, and if they guessed the right side of the coin that was side up, they would get an extra $1, but if they guessed wrong, they would lose that $1. So they found that the non-bilingual students partook in that activity 71% of the time and took that high risk. But non-bilingual students took the risk only 54% of the time. This doesn't seem like much because they're both pretty high, but when you are making decisions in life, this is a great difference in the two data sets. Because when you make decisions, you want to have a clear head and you want to be able to process what you're actually doing. So being bilingual, just so many benefits, including decision making. It can just make a world of difference when you are in a tough situation in life. And so another very interesting experiment I found relating to the physical changes to the brain. Now, this may seem very weird because, like, how can your brain change, you might ask. But experiment I saw that was conducted in a university in Sweden followed a group of bilingual students that studied language intensively for 3 months. And then they followed a group of non-bilingual students that studied medicine for 3 months. So they took an MRI before they studied for 3 months, and they took an MRI after they studied for 3 months. And what they found was that a part of the brain called the hippocampus, it experienced growth and development. And that is pretty significant if you really think about how only 10% of your brain is really taken up with knowledge and facts. So just expanding that just creates so much more opportunities to learn and just grow as a person. And I found a very interesting quote from George Steiner, American literary critic, and he stated that once a language dies, a way of understanding the world dies with it. And I really just think this speaks volumes to what I'm trying to tell you today, that learning a new language is so beneficial to you and what you're trying to achieve in life. Anything you're trying to do in life, having a new language as a skill set is just not a negative factor at all. So, as George Steiner said, a way of the world dies. A way of understanding the world dies as a language dies. So language allows people to communicate and share ideas and share their thoughts. So without language, ideas are not able to be shared and new innovations are not able to be created in the world. And so when you decide to learn a new language or not to learn a new language, you may be scared from the amount of work and effort and time it takes. And what I would say to that is don't be scared and don't be deterred, because the payoff is so immense that when you learn a new language, you develop so many skill sets that allow you to develop new outlooks on the world and just change your worldview, and from a negative worldview that doesn't really know much about different cultures and is kind of biased towards certain minorities in the world, to a more positive worldview that accepts everyone and accepts everyone's rich history and their traditions. Thank you.